On the morning of my 70th birthday, I walked into Pacific Coast Savings at 8:47 a.m. I know the exact time because I checked Patty's watch, the silver one I've worn on my right wrist since the day she died. I was there to move some funds into my granddaughter's college account. A birthday gift to myself, really. The kind of thing that makes you feel like your life added up to something. Margaret, my bank manager for 22 years, met me at the door, but she didn't smile the way she usually does. She took my arm and said quietly, "Seth, before your son gets here, there's something you need to see." If you're new to this channel, we tell stories about fathers who refuse to be broken. Real situations, real consequences. If that's your kind of story, hit subscribe and the bell, because what this bank manager showed me changed everything I thought I knew about my own son. Let me start from the beginning. I spent 40 years building bridges, overpasses in Sacramento, highway spans in the Central Valley, a pedestrian crossing in San Francisco that engineers still reference in textbooks. I was good at it. Not famous good, reliable good, the kind of good that means nothing you built ever fell down. Patty and I had 41 years together. It wasn't enough. Pancreatic cancer took her 3 years ago. Fast, merciless, the kind of collapse you can't reinforce against no matter how many load calculations you run. She went from diagnosis to gone in 11 weeks. After she died, I shrank. That's the honest word for it. I kept the house. I kept my rental properties. I kept my pension and my morning walks and my coffee at Hal's Diner on Sunrise Boulevard. But the life inside the routine, that shrank. My daughter Linda calls every Sunday like it's a federal requirement. She teaches high school math. Married a good man named Miguel. She checks on me the way you check on a bridge after a storm. Methodical, thorough, looking for cracks. My son Derek lives 20 minutes away. Visits like I'm 1,000 miles out. He comes by when he needs something, stays long enough to seem like he doesn't, and leaves before the silence gets honest. 2 years ago I had a hip replacement, standard procedure. 3 days in the hospital. While I was lying there, Derek brought me papers to sign. Just some financial stuff, Pops. For your protection, so I can handle the bills while you recover. I didn't read every page. The painkillers had me foggy. I trusted my son. That was my first mistake. 40 years I built bridges. Not one of them ever collapsed. I wish I could say the same about my family. Margaret led me to her private office, closed the door, pulled the blinds. She sat me down in the leather chair across from her desk. The same chair I'd sat in when Patty and I opened our first joint account in 2002. Margaret's hands were trembling. Mine weren't, not yet. She turned her monitor toward me, column after column. Dates on the left, amounts on the right, withdrawal $500, withdrawal $2,000, withdrawal $3,500. Then the numbers climbed. $5,000. $8,000, $8,000 again. 22 months of entries scrolling down that screen like a damage report after a flood. Total, $187,000. Every single withdrawal authorized by a power of attorney. Signed by Seth Thornton. Notarized, legally binding. Margaret explained the new California law, AB 1471, effective January of this year. Banks now had to flag suspicious elder transactions, hold them for 3 business days, establish emergency contacts. "We're required to flag these now, Seth," she said. Her voice cracked on my name. "I'm so sorry." She folded her hands on the desk. She was bracing herself, for tears, for denial, for the kind of confused silence she'd probably rehearsed responses to all morning. "The withdrawals are all linked to one authorized signer," she said. "Your son, Derek." I stared at that screen. I counted the lines. I did the math 3 different ways because that's what engineers do. We verify. The numbers didn't change. My hands began to shake. I looked at Margaret for a long time. She was already reaching for the tissue box. Then I said something she didn't expect. "I know." She blinked. "You... what?" "I've known for 6 months, Margaret. I've known since October." I looked at those numbers and I thought, this is what 22 months of betrayal looks like in 12-point font. 6 months ago, I was sorting Patty's papers. I do that sometimes. Not to organize, to remember. Her handwriting on grocery lists. Her filing system that made no sense to anyone but her. The birthday cards she saved from the kids, rubber-banded by decade. Between a stack of old insurance forms, I found a bank statement. Duplicate copy. Mailed to the house by accident. The system had been sending them to Derek's address for over a year. Someone at the bank had corrected the routing, and this one slipped through. The withdrawal amounts didn't match my records. I went to the bank. Margaret was on vacation that week. A junior teller confirmed that a power of attorney was on file, and that it had been used actively for 18 months. She printed me a summary. 4 pages. I drove home, sat in my kitchen, Patty's chair across from me, empty. I sat there for 4 hours, didn't eat, didn't call anyone, just sat with the math. Then I picked up the phone and called Ray Whitfield. Ray and I roomed together at UC Davis in 1974. He went into law. I went into engineering. We stayed close the way men do. Fishing trips, football games, the occasional honest phone call at midnight. He's an estate planning attorney, 71 years old and sharper than most 30-year-olds in his firm. I told him everything. Ray was quiet for a long time. Then he said, "Don't react. Don't confront. Document everything. And let me build you a wall he can't climb over." I asked him what that meant. "An engineer doesn't demolish a bridge while people are still on it," Ray said. "You wait until you control the traffic." So I waited, and I started to build. The hardest part wasn't pretending to be weak. It was watching my son be relieved that I was. I started the act in November, small things at first. Asking Derek the same question twice in one conversation. Misplacing my checkbook. Leaving it on the kitchen counter, then asking Derek if he'd seen it. Calling him by his dead uncle's name. "Sorry, Howard. I mean Derek. I get mixed up." Derek never corrected me with concern. He corrected me with satisfaction. I saw it in the way his shoulders dropped. Relief, not worry. Like a man watching a security camera go offline. One afternoon, I was at Derek's house. Vanessa was in the kitchen. Derek was on the phone in the hallway. I was supposed to be watching television in the den, and I was, except the volume was low and the hallway wall was thin. "See, Vanessa?" Derek said. "He's slipping." He called me Howard again. "This makes things easier." I heard Vanessa's voice from the kitchen. "Good." One word. I got up slowly, went to the bathroom, gripped the porcelain sink until my knuckles turned white. Meanwhile, I was sharper than I'd been in years. Purpose does that. Ray and I met every Tuesday at his office. I documented every withdrawal, photographed every bank statement, kept a timeline in a composition notebook, the same kind I used on job sites for 40 years. The cost was high. I stopped sleeping through the night, lost 12 pounds. The loneliness of performing weakness for your own child. There's no engineering metaphor for that. It just hurts. One Saturday, Lily visited. She sat on my lap and put her small hands on my face. "Grandpa, are you okay? You seem sad." I hugged her tight and thought, this is who I'm protecting. Let me tell you about my son's life, the one my money built. New SUV in the driveway, a Cadillac Escalade, $62,000. Derek told Linda he got a deal through a friend. The friend didn't exist. The deal was my savings account. Kitchen renovation, marble countertops, custom cabinetry, a 6-burner range Vanessa found in an architectural magazine, $35,000. Derek told me it was a gift from Vanessa's parents. Vanessa's parents live in a 2-bedroom apartment in Stockton. They've never gifted anyone $35,000. Lily's private school tuition, $28,000 a year. Derek cited a scholarship. There was no scholarship. There was a 70-year-old man's checking account and a piece of paper signed in a hospital bed. Derek has started and collapsed 3 businesses in 10 years. A farm-to-table restaurant that lasted 8 months. A fitness app that never launched. A real estate flip that lost $40,000 of borrowed money. Each failure was someone else's fault. The market, his partners, the timing. Vanessa found the power of attorney in my hospital discharge papers. She researched what it permitted. She told Derek, "It's not stealing if it's family money." They had a system. Derek handled the withdrawals. Vanessa managed the spending, and together they built a rationalization strong enough to sleep on. Dad doesn't spend it anyway. He'd want us to have it. Mom would have given it to us. Derek mentioned the birthday dinner one night on the phone. I was listening on the extension, an old habit from the act. We'll do a big thing for Pops. 30 people. He'll love it. Vanessa's reply, and afterwards we do the last transfer, the big one. Vanessa didn't marry my son for love. She married him for a safety net. When the net had holes, she'd patch them with my money. Derek planned the birthday dinner at La Maison, a restaurant in Roseville with white tablecloths and a string quartet on weekends. 30-plus guests, former colleagues, old friends, neighbors who remembered Patty, the kind of gathering that looks like love from the outside. The real plan was underneath. While everyone sat at dinner, Vanessa would execute a wire transfer. $45,000, the largest single withdrawal yet. The authorization form cited emergency home medical equipment for me, a hospital bed, a wheelchair, monitoring devices. Equipment I didn't need because there was nothing wrong with me except a son who wished there was. The birthday cake was ordered from a bakery on Fairway Drive. 3 tiers, vanilla. Happy 71st, Pops, in blue frosting. Derek paid for it with a credit card linked to my account. He paid for the party, celebrating me with my own money. The irony would be funny if it didn't cost $187,000. Derek practiced his toast in the bathroom mirror. I know this because Linda told me later. She'd stopped by his house unannounced and heard him through the door. To the greatest father a son could ask for. He said it 3 times, adjusting his inflection. I didn't know the specific details of their plan, not yet. But I knew the pattern. Engineers know patterns. Stress builds before failure. Load increases before collapse. And my son's behavior had all the markers of a final push. I called Ray 2 weeks before the dinner. Whatever they're planning, it'll be on my birthday. They'll want me surrounded by witnesses to my decline. Ray said, "Then I'll be there too. Just an old friend at a birthday party. Nothing suspicious about that." My son ordered a 3-tier cake to celebrate the father he was robbing. The frosting said Pops. The receipt said $187,000. Linda called me 2 weeks before the birthday. "Dad, I need to talk to you about Derek." She'd been doing her own math. Linda teaches math, algebra and statistics. Numbers don't lie to her any more than they lie to me. "Derek's spending doesn't match his income," she said. "I've been tracking it." She started listing. The new car, $62,000. The kitchen, $35,000. Lily's tuition, $28,000 a year. She paused. He makes $55,000. Even with Vanessa's staging work, the math doesn't hold. She paused. Either Derek won the lottery, or he's getting money from somewhere he shouldn't be. I was quiet for a moment. Then I told her everything. 6 months of acting, the duplicate bank statement, Ray's strategy, the wall we were building. Linda went silent for so long, I thought the call dropped. When she spoke, her voice was tight, not sad, furious. "Dad, you should have told me." "I needed to know you'd reach the same conclusion on your own," I said. "And you did." She exhaled hard. "What do you need from me?" "Your notes, your documentation, everything you've tracked independently." "Done." Then Linda told me something that changed the shape of the whole thing. Vanessa had been calling extended family, aunts, cousins, old friends of Patty's, telling them I was showing early signs of dementia, forgetting conversations, repeating stories, getting confused at the grocery store. She'd been seeding the narrative for months. Insurance, in case I ever accused them. If I came forward, they'd say, "Poor Seth, he's confused. Derek's been managing his finances because he can't." My daughter found the same cracks I did. She just found them from the outside. "Linda," I said, "we're going to need a bigger wall." 5 months ago, I sat in Ray's office on a Tuesday morning and signed the most important document of my life, an irrevocable living trust. Once signed, it could not be reversed, modified, or accessed by any power of attorney. It was a vault with no key, only a door that opened on my terms. Into the trust went everything that mattered. 4 rental properties in Placer County, valued at $2.1 million, my pension payout account, a brokerage account holding $340,000, the total, roughly $2.8 million, the work of 40 years, every bridge, every blueprint, every 6 a.m. morning in a hard hat. The beneficiaries were three. Lily's education fund, 60%, enough for any school she wanted, any future she chose. The UC Davis Patricia Thornton Engineering Scholarship, 25%. Patty would have liked that. Her name on something that helped young builders. The California Elder Abuse Prevention Fund, 15%. Because I could. Derek's share, 0. Unless he completed full restitution of the $187,000 on a structured payment plan. Unless he completed 200 hours of volunteer work with elder care services. Unless he wrote a notarized statement of accountability, not an apology. A reckoning. I kept one personal checking account, about $30,000, enough to live on, enough to let Derek think there was still something to take. Ray watched me sign. Once this is done, there's no going back. Even if Derek changes. I looked at him. If he changes, the trust has a path for him. If he doesn't, the trust has a wall. I've signed 1,000 engineering documents in my life. Inspection reports, load certifications, completion affidavits. This one was the heaviest. I didn't disinherit my son. I gave him a choice. He just doesn't know it yet. Now, if you're watching this and thinking about your own parents or your own children, I need you to do 2 things. First, hit that subscribe button, because this story is about to turn in a direction you won't expect. Second, drop a comment. Have you ever discovered someone you trusted was lying about money? Your story might help someone else. Now back to my birthday. I woke at 5:30 on my birthday. The house was dark. The house is always dark now. Patty used to leave the hall light on because she said empty hallways shouldn't look empty. I made coffee in the kitchen. Her chair sat across from mine, catching the first stripe of morning sun through the window above the sink. I didn't sit in it. I never do. 70 years old. I stood at the counter and let that number settle. 70 years of framing, pouring, welding, inspecting, calculating, and the biggest structural failure of my life was happening inside my own family. I adjusted my tie in the bathroom mirror, checked Patty's watch, the silver face catching the overhead light. I touched the crystal with my thumb the way I always do. A habit, a prayer without words. I picked up my keys, drove to Pacific Coast Savings. The streets were quiet. Roseville at dawn looks like a blueprint. Clean lines, no people, everything in its place. In the car, I tried to rehearse what I'd say tonight. The words, the sequence. Then I stopped myself. Engineers don't rehearse. We build to spec and trust the structure. I'd spent 6 months building this. The materials were sound. The foundation was poured. Tonight was just the load test. I looked at myself in the rearview mirror. Silver hair. Reading glasses in the breast pocket. Lines on my face that Patty used to trace with her finger when she thought I was sleeping. 70 years old. And tonight, I find out if any of them were worth it. I put on the suit I buried my wife in. Some days just call for black. Margaret was waiting by the front entrance when I arrived. She held the glass door open and nodded toward the back corridor, without a word. She'd been rehearsing too. Her office smelled like coffee and printer toner. She closed the door, drew the blinds on the interior window that faced the lobby, sat behind her desk and clasped her hands together, the way people do when they're about to deliver news that will ruin your morning. She turned the monitor toward me. Transaction log. 22 months. Every line a small demolition. She explained the new law, a B1471, the mandatory review, the flagging system. Her voice was careful, professional, cracking at the edges. She'd managed Patty's accounts too. She'd sent flowers to the funeral. She was prepared for me to fall apart. She had tissues on the desk, a glass of water. The phone number for Adult Protective Services printed on a sticky note by her keyboard. I said, "Margaret, I need you to do something for me." She blinked. "Of course. Print me a certified copy of every transaction, time-stamped, notarized by the bank." She stared. "Seth, Do you already know about this? I've known for 6 months, but tonight my son is going to find out that I know. Margaret leaned back in her chair. I could see her recalculating everything. My visits over the past months, my questions, the way I'd asked to add myself as an emergency financial contact 3 weeks ago. "What are you going to do?" she asked. "I'm going to give him one last chance to tell the truth." I stood. "And then I'm going to show him what happens when he doesn't." She printed the report, a thick manila envelope. 22 months of withdrawals, every single one. I put it in my jacket pocket. It sat against my chest like a second heartbeat. Margaret looked at me the way you look at a building you're not sure will hold. I told her, I'm not the one who's going to collapse. That evening, the drive to La Maison takes 30 minutes if you stay on Interstate 80. I took surface streets. I needed the time. Morning light on the windshield, strip malls and oak trees, neighborhoods I'd built roads to, a world that looked ordinary and permanent, the way everything looks before you understand what's happening underneath. I thought about Derek as a boy, 7 years old, sitting on my lap at a job site in Folsom. Hard hat too big for his head, sliding down over his ears. He pointed at the half-finished overpass and said, "I want to build things like you, Dad." I bought him a toy crane that Christmas. He slept with it for a year. 14 years old, standing in the driveway after his first fender bender, shaking, scared I'd yell. I didn't yell. I checked the car, checked him, and said, "Metal bends back. Are you okay?" He hugged me so hard my ribs ached. 28 years old, calling me from the back room of a failing restaurant. "Pops, I need 15,000. I'll pay you back." I gave it to him. He never paid it back. But he was my son, and his voice was small, and fathers are built to say yes. Then I thought about the hospital, the bed, the fog, the pen in his hand. I was lying on my back with a new hip and painkillers in my blood. I couldn't stand, I couldn't focus, and my son handed me a pen and pointed to the line. My son didn't need my money. He needed me to not notice. I pulled the car to the shoulder, killed the engine, sat in silence for 5 minutes, touched Patty's watch and pressed my thumb against the crystal until the cold bit. Then I started the car and drove to the restaurant. I built bridges for 40 years. My son burned the one between us for $187,000. La Maison sits on a corner lot in Old Roseville, behind a row of crepe myrtles that bloom pink in the spring, white tablecloths visible through tall windows, a string quartet playing something by Vivaldi inside. Derek went all out, the most expensive guilt I've ever seen. He was at the door when I pulled up, big smile, open arms. "Pops, happy birthday." He hugged me like a son in a commercial, camera ready, tight enough to seem real, loose enough to let go fast. Vanessa appeared behind him. Silk blouse, pearl earrings, she air-kissed my cheek. "You look wonderful, Dad." She hadn't called me Dad with sincerity in years. Tonight it came out polished, practiced, like a word she'd memorized from a script. Inside, the private dining room. 30 guests seated at a long table. Candles, flower arrangements, former colleagues from Caltrans, neighbors from the cul-de-sac, people who remembered Patty and kept saying her name like it was medicine. Linda was already there with Miguel. She caught my eye across the room, a barely perceptible nod, a signal. I'm here. I know. Ray Whitfield sat at the far end of the table. Gray suit, reading glasses. He looked like any other retired professional at a birthday dinner. Nobody paid attention to him. That was the point. The manila envelope pressed against my ribs. I could feel its weight with every breath. Lily came running from the corner. "Grandpa, I made you a card." She held it up, construction paper, glitter, her careful handwriting. I knelt down. My hip protested. I hugged her anyway and smelled her shampoo and held on. Over her shoulder, I saw Vanessa checking her phone. Her thumb scrolled. Her jaw tightened. She was monitoring something. A pending wire transfer. $45,000. Scheduled for 9 p.m. My granddaughter handed me a card that said, "Best grandpa ever." Behind her, her mother was stealing the last of my savings. Derek stood up at 7:15, tapped his wine glass with a butter knife. The room fell quiet, the way rooms do when someone claims the air. "I want to say something about my father," Derek began. He looked at me, practiced warmth, calibrated sincerity. I'd watched him rehearse this in my mind ever since Linda told me about the bathroom mirror. "To my father, Seth Thornton," he raised his glass, "the man who taught me everything about integrity, about hard work, about what it means to build something that lasts." 30 people leaned in. A woman at the end of the table dabbed her eyes. "Pops, you gave us everything. Tonight, we give back. Happy 70th? The room erupted. Applause. A few cheers. People crying. Derek crossed the room and hugged me. I let him. I hugged him back. The envelope between us like a wall, neither could see. My hands were shaking, not from emotion, from restraint. Every muscle in my forearms tightened against what I wanted to say. 6 months of silence pressing against my teeth. Under the applause, I leaned close to Derek's ear. "That was beautiful, son. Every word." He beamed. He didn't hear the edge. He heard a grateful old man. He heard exactly what he expected. Linda gripped Miguel's hand under the table. Her knuckles were white. Miguel put his other hand over hers. Across the room, Ray reached for something on the table in front of him. A small leather folder. He placed it casually beside his water glass. Inside, the trust documents, the blueprint, the wall. I caught Ray's eye, gave an almost imperceptible nod. Not yet, but soon. 30 people raised their glasses to a father's legacy. My son raised his to the money he was about to finish taking. My phone buzzed at 7:48 p.m. I felt it against my thigh. One vibration, a text. I waited until Derek was across the room refilling his wine. Then I looked under the table. Margaret. Wire transfer attempted. $45,000. Flagged and held per AB 1471. 3-day delay activated. Derek's name on the authorization. I read it twice. My face didn't change. 40 years of poker games at Ray's kitchen table finally paid for themselves. I looked up, scanned the room, found Vanessa. She was at the far end of the table, phone in her lap, thumb hovering over the screen. Her expression shifted. A micro-movement, a tightening around the eyes. Something had gone wrong. The confirmation she was waiting for hadn't come. The wire didn't clear. Vanessa leaned toward Derek as he returned to his seat. She whispered something. Short. Urgent. Derek's jaw clenched. He put his napkin on the table, stood, and excused himself. "Just need to make a call. 1 minute." He walked toward the lobby. I touched Patty's watch under my sleeve, pressed the crystal against my wrist bone. The bridge is starting to sway. They can feel it, but they can't see why. Derek returned 3 minutes later. His smile was back, but thinner, stretched tighter across his face, the kind of smile that covers a crack. He sat down and put his hand on my shoulder. "Everything okay, Pops?" "Perfect," I said. "Best birthday I've had in years." The AB 1471 hold was automatic. The law stopped the wire. But I had also called Margaret the previous week and added myself as an emergency financial contact on the account. Double lock, belt, and suspenders, because that's how engineers build things that hold. The bank stopped the wire, the law stopped the wire, but really I stopped the wire 6 months ago when I decided to stop being a fool. Dessert was announced at 8:20. The waitstaff began clearing dinner plates. Derek and Vanessa disappeared into the hallway. I saw them go. I didn't follow. I didn't need to hear the words. I could read the shapes. Derek leaned against the wall, arms crossed. Defensive posture. Vanessa stood close, her voice low, her finger jabbing the air between them. From across the dining room, through the open doorway, I watched the way I've watched 1,000 structures under stress. You don't need sound, you watch the joints. You watch where the weight shifts. Later, Linda told me what she overheard from the restroom hallway. "Vanessa, the transfer was blocked. They've never blocked one before." Derek, "It's probably that new banking law. I read something." Vanessa, "It's not the law. Someone flagged the account. We need to move. Tonight." Derek, "It's his birthday, Vanessa." Vanessa, "It's $45,000, Derek. If that account gets frozen, we lose everything." A pause. Linda said she could hear Derek breathing. Heavy, uneven. Derek, "What if he finds out?" Vanessa, He won't. Think about Lily's school. Think about the mortgage. A pause. Think about what happens if we stop now. Another pause. Shorter. Derek, okay. He went back to the table. I watched him sit down and smooth his napkin. He poured himself more wine. He laughed at someone's joke. He put his arm around the back of my chair and squeezed my shoulder. I watched my son and his wife argue in a hallway, and I thought, that's what a load-bearing wall looks like right before it cracks. The dessert forks came out. Nobody noticed the fracture. Derek slid his chair closer to mine during the dessert course. He draped his arm across my shoulders. Father and son, the performance of closeness. Hey, Pops, can I talk to you about something? Of course, son. He lowered his voice, conspiratorial, warm. I've been looking at this real estate opportunity, strip mall conversion in Elk Grove. He leaned in. My buddy Craig says it's guaranteed. 12% returns in 18 months. I nodded slowly, confused old man nod, the one I'd been practicing. How much would something like that cost? I asked. $50,000 to get in. I'd never ask, but this one's a sure thing. $50,000. That's a lot, isn't it? I'll have to ask my bank lady. Derek leaned closer. No, Pops, you don't need to ask anyone. I can handle it. He squeezed my arm. I have that power of attorney, remember? For your protection. For my protection, I repeated. Slow. Vacant. Right. You know, I can never remember what that paper says exactly. It just means I can help you with the banking stuff, so you don't have to worry. I looked at Derek, held his gaze. This was the last time I would perform for my own son. The last nod, the last confused blink, the last time I would shrink myself so he could feel large. That's very thoughtful, son, I said. He smiled. He patted my shoulder. He went back to his seat. Under the table, across from me, Linda was typing notes on her phone. Not a recording, not audio. Timestamps, quotes, documentation. The way I taught her. The way engineers record everything. My son looked me in the eye and explained how stealing from me was for my protection, and I nodded, because that was the last nod I'd ever give him. The lights dimmed at 8:45. The kitchen doors swung open. A 3-tier vanilla cake rolled out on a silver cart. Happy 71st, Pops. Written in blue frosting across the middle tier. Sparklers on top throwing gold light across the ceiling. The string quartet switched to Happy Birthday. 30 voices joined in. Lily stood on her chair to see better. She clapped with both hands above her head. Blow them out, Grandpa! Blow them out! I stood. The candles, 7 of them, one for each decade, wavered in front of me. I looked at the cake, at the blue letters, at the word Pops. I blew them out, all 7, one breath. The room cheered. Speech! Speech! Derek started the chant. Others picked it up. I stood there. 30 faces, candlelight and wine glasses, the manila envelope a fist against my ribs. 70 years, I began. That's a lot of bridges, a lot of blueprints, a lot of mornings. I paused, let the silence gather. When you build things for a living, you learn one lesson above all others. I paused. The strength of a structure isn't tested on sunny days, it's tested in the storm. I looked around the room, face by face. I let my eyes land on Derek. I held there. I want to thank everyone who came tonight. I looked around the room, and I want to say, I see you. All of you. I see exactly who you are. Derek clapped. Too fast. Too loud. Others followed, but Linda saw my eyes. She knew, and Ray's hand rested on the leather folder. I sat down. The audience exhaled. Was that the moment? No, not yet. I'm an engineer. I don't rush. I don't guess. I don't swing until the load is measured and the ground is sure. I gave a speech about strength and storms, and my son clapped because he didn't know he was the storm. After the cake, I touched Derek's arm. Walk with me. Birthday tradition. He hesitated. A flicker behind his eyes. Calculation, not sentiment. Then sure, Pops. We stepped through the side door into the parking lot. Cool April air. City lights reflected off low clouds. The sound of the quartet leaked through the walls, muffled and distant, like music from another life. I stood near the edge of the lot. Derek stood next to me. We faced the street, 2 men looking at nothing. Derek, I want to ask you something. I want you to think before you answer. Sure, Pops. Is there anything you want to tell me? Silence. Anything at all? About money, about the accounts, about the paper you had me sign? The moment stretched. I could feel it. The space between my question and his answer, wide enough to drive a truck through. His face cycled through expressions the way a dial turns. Confusion, calculation, risk assessment, decision. I don't know what you mean, Pops. Everything's fine. The accounts are fine. You're sure? He smiled. The same smile from the toast. The same smile from every lie he'd told in the last 22 months. I'm sure. Happy birthday, Dad. I nodded, slowly. The way you nod when a test result comes back and confirms what you already suspected? Okay, let's go back inside. We walked back through the side door. Derek held it open for me. Chivalrous. Performative. The last act of a play that was about to close. Something closed behind my eyes. The father stepped back. The engineer stepped forward. I gave my son a door. He could have walked through it. He chose to lock it instead. We're halfway through this story, and I know some of you are waiting for the moment everything changes. It's coming. But first, if this story resonates with you, share it with someone who needs to hear it. Elder financial abuse is real. It's growing, and most of the time it happens in families that look just like mine. Like button, share button. They matter more than you think. Now, back to that restaurant. I walked back into the dining room. Something was different. People noticed but couldn't name it. I wasn't shuffling. My shoulders weren't rounded. My eyes weren't foggy or searching for words that weren't lost. I stood the way I used to stand on a job site. Feet planted, spine straight, hands at my sides. The confused old man was gone. He'd served his purpose. I walked to Linda first, leaned down. 2 words. It's time. She nodded. No surprise. She'd been waiting. She stood and moved through the room quietly, touched the arm of a cousin here, whispered to Miguel there. The closest family friends were asked to stay. The waitstaff were signaled to guide the remaining guests toward the bar area for an after-dinner drink. Linda managed it the way she manages a school assembly. Smooth, calm, authoritative. The room thinned. 30 became 12. Then 12 became 8. Seth, Derek, Vanessa, Linda, Miguel, Ray, and in the next room, Lily with the babysitter, watching a movie on an iPad, unaware. 5 family friends lingered at the far end of the table. People who'd known me for decades. They didn't understand yet, but they stayed because Linda asked and because something in the air had changed. Derek noticed. His head swiveled. What's going on? Where's everyone going? I sat at the head of the table. My birthday. Sit down, Derek. He stood there. Vanessa, you too. Something in my voice. Derek had never heard this register. This wasn't confused Seth. This wasn't foggy Seth. This was the man who'd stood on bridge decks in 100-degree heat and told contractors their work wasn't good enough. This was the man who'd built things that held. Derek looked at Ray. Who's this? Ray Whitfield, my attorney and my oldest friend. I stopped pretending, and the first thing my son noticed wasn't my words. It was my posture. I reached into my jacket. The manila envelope came out smooth and flat. I placed it on the white tablecloth between the wine glasses and the dessert forks. This is a certified notarized transaction log from Pacific Coast Savings. My voice was level, deposition calm. 22 months of withdrawals from my personal account. Total, $187,000. I slid the envelope toward Derek. He stared at it like it was a device he'd never seen before. Every withdrawal authorized by a power of attorney. I let that sit. A document I signed in a hospital bed 2 years ago while recovering from hip surgery. I looked at Derek. A document you told me was for routine financial management. Derek's face drained, not red to white, more like someone dimming a light. The color left his cheeks, his lips, the skin around his eyes. He aged 5 years in 3 seconds. I've known for 6 months, Derek. The room had no air. Nobody moved. A fork clinked somewhere, someone's hand shaking against a plate. Vanessa from 2 seats away. Seth, I don't know what. I didn't look at her. Vanessa, I'll get to you. Derek reached for the envelope. His fingers touched the edge. I placed my hand flat on it. Firm, final. You've taken enough documents from me. He pulled his hand back. He looked around the table, at Linda, whose face was stone, at Miguel, who sat with his arms folded, at the family friends who were beginning to understand, at Ray, who sat perfectly still with the leather folder in front of him. Derek looked back at me. His mouth opened. Nothing came out. I laid the envelope on the table the way I used to lay blueprints. Flat, precise, and impossible to argue with. Derek's defense came in phases. I'd seen this pattern before, on job sites and contract disputes, in any room where a man is cornered and cycling through options. Phase 1, denial. This is a misunderstanding. Those were authorized. You said I could. Phase 2, deflection. The bank made errors. They've been flagging things wrong since that new law came in. Margaret's been overzealous. Phase 3, self-pity. I was trying to help you, Dad. His voice climbed. After Mom died, you weren't handling things. Someone had to step up. Phase 4, blame. If you just helped me when I asked. His voice climbed higher. The restaurant. The app. I came to you. I asked. He jabbed his finger at the table. And you said wait. You always said wait. I listened to all of it. Every word. Didn't interrupt. Didn't react. Sat with my hands on the table, fingers laced, the way I sit during a structural review. I pressed my thumb against Patty's watch, under my cuff, the silver crystal cool against my skin. Engineer's patience. Let the data come in. Evaluate after. When he stopped, I said, Are you finished? You don't understand the pressure I've been under. I understand $187,000 worth of pressure, Derek. His eyes filled. His voice cracked like a beam under too much weight. I'm sorry, Pops. I really am. I waited. It's just... He wiped his face with the back of his hand. Mom would have understood. Everything in me tightened. That was the wrong thing to say. The only wrong thing left. Your mother left everything to me because she trusted me to protect it. My voice was quiet, flat, final. She was right. You are the thing she was protecting it from. My son tried denial, then pity, then blame. He went through them like a man trying keys on a lock that had already been changed. I turned to Vanessa. Your turn. Vanessa sat straight, hands in her lap. The mask of composure she wore like armor, pleasant smile, even breathing, the kind of stillness that hides a sharp mind, calculating exits. I don't know what Derek did with the money. I managed the household, not the accounts. Linda spoke. First time all night. Her voice cut through the room like a blade laid flat on glass. Vanessa, I have 3 months of your Amazon orders. Your Zillow search history for a vacation home in Tahoe. Linda's voice didn't waver. And a credit card statement. $12,000 in furniture. All linked to Dad's withdrawals. Vanessa's composure cracked. Not shattered. Cracked. A hairline fracture across her expression. She turned to Derek. Her voice dropped to a whisper that everyone heard. You told me he'd never find out. Derek opened his mouth. Nothing useful came out. Vanessa pivoted, faster than I expected. This is entrapment. You set this up. You can't just... Ray, calm as concrete. It's not entrapment. It's bookkeeping, and it's admissible. Vanessa's final move came fast. She pulled it from the place where all her strategies lived. The vault of last resorts. She looked directly at me. If you do this, Seth, you will never see Lily again. The room went cold. I mean that literally. I felt the temperature change. 5 family friends at the far end of the table stopped breathing. I didn't respond to the threat. Instead, I looked toward the side room where Lily's babysitter sat. Lily was in there, playing, safe, watching a movie. Lily is the only reason we're having this conversation in a private room instead of a police station. Vanessa threatened to take my granddaughter away. She didn't realize she'd just told the room exactly what kind of mother she was. A waiter opened the door. Young kid, college-aged. He looked at the table and sensed something in the silence that made him hesitate. Would anyone like cake? Nobody answered. The door closed softly behind him. The 3-tier cake sat on the side table where it had been wheeled after the singing. "Happy 71st, Pops!" In blue frosting, the candles burned down to waxy nubs. The sparklers were dead. The cake hadn't been cut. It sat there like a monument to something that never happened. The celebration this night was supposed to be. I looked at it for a long time. "When your mother turned 70, I said, "I baked her a cake myself. Vanilla. 2 layers. Lopsided." I almost smiled. She said it was the best cake she ever had. I let the memory sit. Patty in the kitchen, flour on her reading glasses, laughing at me for using a construction level on a cake pan. She would have been horrified by this. All of this. I looked around the table. Not the money, the lying, the performing, the using your own father's hospital stay as a business opportunity. Derek put his head in his hands. His shoulders moved. Whether he was crying or just breathing hard, I couldn't tell. I wasn't sure it mattered. "I didn't come here tonight to punish you, Derek." My voice was steady. "I came here to show you the man I actually am. Because somewhere in the last 2 years, you forgot." The birthday cake sat there with my name on it, surrounded by people who'd eaten my savings and called it love. I looked at the cake one more time. Then I turned to Ray. "Go ahead." Ray opened the leather folder. The clasp made a small sound. Metal on metal. In the silence, it sounded like a latch turning. "5 months ago," Ray said, adjusting his glasses, "Mr. Thornton established an irrevocable living trust. The following assets have been transferred into this trust and are no longer accessible via power of attorney or any other financial instrument." He spoke the way attorneys speak when the record matters, each word placed like a brick. 4 residential rental properties located in Placer County, California. Current assessed value, approximately $2.1 million. 1 pension payout account, 1 brokerage account, valued at approximately $340,000. Total assets placed in trust, approximately $2.8 million. Derek's head came up from his hands. $2.8 million. The trust beneficiaries are as follows. Ray didn't look at Derek. He read from the document. Lily Thornton Education Fund, 60%. The UC Davis Patricia. Thornton Engineering Scholarship, 25%. The California Elder Abuse Prevention Fund, 15%. Silence. Derek's mouth moved without sound. Then, "And me? What about me?" I leaned forward. "There is a provision for you, Derek." I let that land. Full restitution of the $187,000. Structured payment plan. I paused. 200 hours of volunteer work with elder care services. Real work, not a photo opportunity. Another pause. And a written notarized letter of accountability. Not an apology. An accountability statement. And if I don't? Then the trust stands as written. And this envelope, I tapped the manila packet on the table, goes to the Placer County District Attorney. Elder financial abuse. A felony in California. Vanessa's voice came sharp from the end of the table. "You can't do this. We'll contest it." Ray turned to her, measured, patient. "An irrevocable trust cannot be contested by a beneficiary who was never named. It's settled law, Mrs. Thornton." Vanessa's face collapsed. Not a crack this time, a collapse. The foundation she'd built her plan on, access to Seth's money, had been removed from underneath her. My son asked what he got. I told him he got a choice. That was more than he gave me. Derek stood up. His chair scraped the hardwood. The sound cut through the room like a saw through plywood. "This isn't fair." His voice shook. "I'm your son." I stood too. We were face to face. Same height, same jaw, same hands. Only mine were shaking and his were clenched. I spoke quietly. The room leaned in. "I signed that paper in a hospital bed. You handed me a pen while I couldn't stand. Nobody moved. I couldn't walk. I couldn't think straight." My voice held. "And you used that moment, the one moment when I needed you most, to take everything." My hands were shaking. I could feel the tremor in my fingers, in my wrists, traveling up my forearms. But my voice was steel cable, taut, load-bearing, holding. "Derek, I was going to pay it back. In 22 months, you never paid back a single dollar. Not one." Derek sank into his chair, slow, like a building settling after the ground shifts. From across the table, Linda spoke. Her voice was steady and hard and carried every ounce of the protective fury she'd been holding since I'd told her the truth 2 weeks ago. He handed you a pen while you couldn't stand. She repeated my words, not for emphasis, for verdict. The repetition hit Derek like a second impact on the same fracture line. He flinched, physically flinched. The 5 family friends at the end of the table sat in absolute stillness. One of them, Harold Myers, who'd worked with me at Caltrans for 20 years, had his hand over his mouth. I signed that paper in a hospital bed. You handed me a pen while I couldn't stand. The words hung in the room. They would hang there for years. Vanessa stood. She was done with tear, or whatever performance she'd been giving that resembled them. Her voice went flat, ice on concrete. You think you're so clever, Seth? The old engineer with his little plan? She looked around the table, hunting for allies. She found none. You drove your son to this. You sat on millions while your own child struggled. Her voice hardened. What kind of father does that? The kind who wanted his son to earn it. Earn it? She laughed, short, sharp, ugly. Like you earned it? Government contracts and a pension? She shook her head. You were lucky. Derek worked 3 times as hard. Linda cut in. Derek's 3 businesses failed because he couldn't manage a lemonade stand, Vanessa. Vanessa spun to Linda. Stay out of this. This is between family. I am family. That's exactly the problem you never understood. Vanessa turned back to me. Her final card. The one she'd been saving. If you file that report, I will make sure every person in this community knows. Her voice was shaking now, not with tears, with fury. I will tell them you're senile, vindictive, that you've lost your mind. She leaned forward, and they will believe me. I looked at her, waited until the room had absorbed every word she'd said. Then, try. 1 word, 1 syllable. It landed like a foundation pin. Ray cleared his throat. Mrs. Thornton, I should note. He paused, selected the word with precision. Threatening a victim of elder financial abuse in front of 7 witnesses is inadvisable, legally speaking. Vanessa's jaw locked. She looked at Derek. Derek looked at the table. She was alone. Vanessa called me vindictive. The woman who stole $187,000 from a widower called me vindictive. Derek's voice came from somewhere low, somewhere deep. A register I hadn't heard since he was a teenager, and broke the neighbor's window and stood on our porch, waiting for me to come home. Stop. Vanessa. Derek, don't you dare. I said stop. The word cracked the room open. Vanessa flinched. Linda went still. Even Ray looked up from the trust documents. Derek turned to me. His face was wreckage, red-eyed, jaw trembling. The performance stripped away. No charm, no deflection, no rehearsed warmth. Just a 42-year-old man sitting in the rubble of something he'd built with stolen materials. I don't know how I got here. I waited. That's all I did. I waited. It started with $500. Just $500? For the electric bill. His voice broke. And then it was easy. And Vanessa said, Don't you put this on me. Vanessa's voice was a blade. Derek looked at her. Something shifted in his face. A wall falling. A truth arriving. You told me he'd never notice. He needed me to not notice. The echo of my own thought, thrown back from my son's mouth. Vanessa grabbed her purse. She stood. She looked at Derek the way you look at a tool that stopped working. Derek didn't follow her. He stayed in his chair. He was alone now. Truly alone. His wife standing behind him with her car keys. His father sitting in front of him with a manila envelope. I'm sorry, Dad. His voice was barely there. I know that's not enough. No, it's not. But it's the first true thing you've said tonight. Derek didn't ask for forgiveness. He asked, What do I have to do? Read the trust document, every page. Then call me. For the first time in 2 years, my son stopped performing. The mask didn't come off gracefully. It shattered. Vanessa walked toward the exit. Her heels clicked on the hardwood, sharp, deliberate, each step a statement. Then she stopped, turned. You'll regret this, Seth. All of you will. She looked at Linda. Her eyes narrowed. Especially you. Linda didn't flinch. Vanessa, I've been regretting you since the wedding. Vanessa scanned the room for Lily. She turned toward the side room. The babysitter, a young woman named Carmen, Linda's former student, stepped into the doorway, casual, blocking. "Where's my daughter?" I spoke. "Lily is safe. She's been safe this whole time." I held Vanessa's gaze, because that's what I do. Vanessa stared at me. I held her gaze. There was nothing left to calculate. No angle, no leverage, no performance that would change what had happened in this room. She knew it. I knew she knew it. She turned. She walked out. The door closed behind her with a soft click. Anticlimactic, ordinary, the way endings usually are. No slam, no storm. Just a woman in pearl earrings walking into a parking lot alone. I turned to the remaining people at the table. Derek, Linda, Miguel, Ray, the family friends who'd witnessed everything and would carry it home like shrapnel. Nobody follows her. Nobody calls her. Let the silence do the work. They nodded. The string quartet had stopped playing. I hadn't noticed when. The restaurant had gone quiet the way buildings go quiet after a demolition. The dust settling, the air reorganizing itself around the absence. Vanessa left the way she arrived, thinking only about what she could take with her. The difference was this time there was nothing left to take. Carmen brought Lily in. She was carrying the iPad under one arm and a juice box in the other hand. Confused, but not scared. She'd been watching a movie about a dog who finds his way home. She hadn't heard anything. "Grandpa, did you like my card?" I knelt. My hip screamed, a sharp, bright pain that radiated from the joint to my lower back. I ignored it. Some things are more important than comfort. I pulled the card from my jacket pocket. Construction paper, gold glitter, purple crayon. Her handwriting, careful, oversized, each letter a small act of concentration. "Happy birthday, Grandpa. You are the best builder in the world. I love you, Lily." I read it out loud, my voice held, barely. "Lily, this is the best birthday present I've ever gotten." She beamed. "Better than cake?" "Better than anything." I held her. She smelled like strawberry shampoo and grape juice. She put her small arms around my neck and squeezed. I closed my eyes. I touched Patty's watch against Lily's back, the silver face pressing into her sweater. The watch that marked time, that counted years, that measured the distance between what was and what is. Over Lily's shoulder, I saw Derek watching from his chair. His face was destroyed, but not with self-pity this time. Not with calculation or charm or deflection. With recognition. He saw, for the first time, what he had nearly cost his daughter. Not money, not inheritance. A grandfather. A Saturday morning routine. A man who would kneel on a bad hip to read a card made of glitter and glue. Derek mouthed 2 words. "I'll try." I nodded. One nod, that's all. My granddaughter asked if I liked her card. She was right about one thing. I was still building. The babysitter took Lily back to the side room. She went willingly. Carmen had promised her ice cream. The door closed. The room was now just 5. Me, Derek, Linda, Miguel, and Ray. I sat across from my son. The table between us was littered with the aftermath. Wine glasses, dessert plates, the manila envelope, the leather folder, the birthday cake on the side table, untouched. Happy 71st Pops, in blue frosting, now slightly wilted under the heat of the room. "Here's what happens next," I said. Derek looked up. His eyes were swollen. His tie was loose. He looked like a man who'd been in a wreck and was only now understanding the damage. "Ray will walk you through the trust. You have 90 days to begin restitution." I nodded toward Ray. "A payment plan is acceptable. Ray will structure it." Derek nodded. 200 hours of volunteer work. Elder care. Not a photo op. I looked at him. Real work. Feeding people. Sitting with them. I held his gaze. Learning what it feels like to be old and dependent on someone who doesn't deserve your trust. "Okay. And a written statement. Not 'I'm sorry.'" I held his gaze. "A statement of what you did. Why it was wrong. What you will do differently. Notarized. Witnessed. And if I do all that, then we start over. Slowly. With supervision." I let a beat pass. "And maybe, you earn your way back. Not into the financial trust. The other kind. And if I don't?" I pulled the manila envelope forward. My fingers rested on it. This goes to the Placer County District Attorney. Elder financial abuse. A felony in California. Silence. I looked at the empty chair where Vanessa had sat. Her water glass still had lipstick on the rim. Her napkin was on the floor. I turned to Derek. You taught my son to steal from his father. Now teach your daughter why. The line was for Vanessa, spoken to Derek, aimed at the future, because Lily would ask someday, and someone would have to answer. Derek took the trust document from Ray. He held it with both hands. He didn't look at me. He looked at the document the way you look at a map after you realize you've been lost. 1 week later, my kitchen, morning coffee. Patty's chair sits across from mine, empty. The sun hits it at 7:15 a.m., a stripe of light across the cushion she reupholstered twice. I don't sit in it, but I don't move it either. Here's what happened after my birthday. Derek moved out of the house within 2 days. He rented a studio apartment in Citrus Heights. Vanessa filed for separation on the 3rd day. She expected him to fight it. He didn't. He signed the papers the same afternoon. Derek called me once. The conversation lasted 4 minutes. He said, "I'm reading the trust, every page." I said, "Good." We sat in silence for 30 seconds. Then he hung up. It was the most honest conversation we'd had in years. Linda had the power of attorney formally revoked. Margaret processed the paperwork at Pacific Coast Savings. She stamped it herself. She told Linda, "I've been wanting to do this for 6 months." The $45,000 wire transfer was permanently blocked. Margaret flagged the entire account history for the State Elder Abuse Registry. The file is open. It will stay open until Derek completes his terms. Lily stays with Derek on weekdays. I see her every Saturday. We build things, birdhouses, model bridges, a bookshelf for her room that we painted purple because she asked. Our routine hasn't changed. I am fiercely, desperately grateful for this. The cost, I sleep better now. The insomnia that lived in me for 6 months packed up and left the night of the dinner. But the house is quieter. I lost a son, maybe temporarily, maybe permanently. The money can be recovered. The trust can't. Not that trust. The real one. A week after the birthday, a letter arrived, handwritten, from a woman in Sacramento named Dorothy Calloway. Her daughter had stolen $90,000 from her retirement account. She'd read something about the California banking law. She was asking for advice. I sat at my kitchen table and wrote her back. I got my money back. I got my dignity back. The thing I lost, you can't put in a trust. Evening, my porch. The street dark except for the Myers porch light 2 houses down. Crickets. A dog barking somewhere on the next block. I took Patty's watch off my wrist, held it in my palm. The silver face caught the porch light, a small cold moon in my hand. I thought about what she would have said. I knew exactly what she would have said. She would have cried first, hard. The way she cried when she found out about Derek's first failed business. Then she would have wiped her face and looked at me with those dark brown eyes and said, "Fix it, Seth. You're an engineer. Fix it." I put the watch back on, buckled the clasp, pressed the crystal against my wrist. My hands were steady. For the first time in 6 months, they were still. No tremor, no vibration, just 2 hands that had built 1,000 things and broken nothing that couldn't be rebuilt. I looked at the street where Derek used to ride his bicycle, 35 years ago, a boy with no fear and no plans, and a toy crane in his backpack. You spend your whole life building something that holds. And when it breaks, you don't walk away. You build again. That's what engineers do. That's my story. If you know someone, a parent, a grandparent, who might need to hear this, send it to them. Subscribe if you haven't. And remember, the strongest structures are the ones that survive the storm. I'm Seth. Good night.